Almost 2 years ago, I wanted to get a mountain bike for myself, and I always wanted to build a bike myself. At the same time, I came onto the fact that you can get bike parts directly from China via AliExpress. So I thought, why not combine those two ideas and build a bike out of AliExpress parts? Said bike stands in front of you or in front of me. So let me review it for you and tell you whether it was a success or utter garbage. To begin with, let's give you a detailed rundown of the parts that I've been using for this build, and probably we should start with the frame because that's the most interesting part. So this is a carbon frame directly from AliExpress. It is from a brand called SpyCycle, and the model is called SpyCycle T1000 Carbon Hardtail 29-inch mountain bike frame. Yeah, I know, quite a mouthful. This was quite a cheap frame and it cost me about 300 euros all in. The frame, including the seat post clamp and the seat post clamp bolt, as well as the derailleur hanger, comes in at exactly 1 kilogram. That is in the size S, which is the smallest size SpyCycle offers for this frame. The frame as well as the seat post are made out of T1000 carbon, which is a carbon that is relatively high-end and pretty common for good Chinese bike frames. The frame is supposed to be combined with 29-inch wheels, which I also did, and with that we get to the next part, which is the wheels. Those are not from AliExpress. Those are Hunt Wheels, a UK brand. These are the RACE XC alloy wheels with also alloy spokes. They can be run tubeless, so they are tubeless ready, which I also did. They are combined with the Maxxis Pace, which is sort of like a racy light XC tire from Maxxis. As I said, I set them up tubeless, but officially these tires are not tubeless compatible, at least not this version. Up until this point, I've not had a problem, however. So let's get to the drivetrain parts of this bike build. This is a mixture of different bike brands that have been used for the drivetrain. Let's start with maybe the most important parts. So that's the shifter, the derailleur and the bottom bracket perhaps. So all these three parts come from ZTTO, and if you have seen other AliExpress cycling videos, then you have definitely come across the brand ZTTO. It is one of the, if not the biggest brand when it comes to cycling parts and tools directly from China. They are a very respected brand when it comes to cycling parts. In this case, this is a 12-speed drivetrain. I have combined it with a crankset that's from a brand that's called Bolani. It is an alloy crankset, nothing special. It's pretty heavy, but it was super cheap, I think around 25 euros. The cassette is a 1152 cassette from the brand called Sunshine. You can also find that in Western online stores sometimes. When it comes to the brakes, however, I have not been willing to sacrifice my safety. So in this case, I went with normal Shimano XT brakes. So we have Shimano hydraulic XT brakes for the front and rear. And what is also Shimano is the chain. I have had to change the chains at around 1,500 kilometers. I have done about 2,000 kilometers with this bike up until this point. Maybe let's go over to the other parts that have also been from AliExpress. As I said before, the seat post is from SpyCycle as well. It was ordered as a set with the frame. It was super cheap and it is quite sturdy. It's not super light, I have to say, but yeah, it's a standard mountain bike sized seat post. It is in the size 31.6 millimeters. What else? So the handlebars are from a no-name brand. At the time, it was one of the most sold carbon one-piece handlebars that were available for mountain bikes. This is a length of 70 millimeters and a width of 75 millimeters, I think. We have here the cheapest grips I could find. The grips are nothing special. They were like 2 euros. They are lock-on grips, which is nice, so they don't move around a lot. The suspension fork, however, is not from AliExpress. This I have gotten used from eBay. This is the RockShox Race Day SID fork. It at the time was the lightest fork available in 100 millimeters. So this fork all in weighs 1,350 grams, which is super light for a suspension fork. The saddle that is attached to the seat post is a Selle Italia SLR Boost. In that case, I went with a brand that I was very familiar with. I wanted my butt to be very comfortable on this bike, also for long tours. What is also from AliExpress is this bottle cage. This is a 9-gram bottle cage out of carbon fiber. It was not cheap, I have to say. This bottle cage alone was 25 euros. I have to say it is obviously super light and it is quite sturdy. I have not broken one yet. With the parts out of the way, let's get to the interesting part. Let me tell you about why I wanted to build this bike. So my goal with this bike was to build a mountain bike myself as cheaply as possible. I wanted it to be 12 speed, so have a nice and modern gear ratio. I wanted it to be below 10 kilograms. I wanted it to be carbon, and also be able to take a beating. So I combined, yeah, different parts that I thought were most suitable. When it comes to AliExpress parts, it is really, really vital to do your due diligence. What I do usually is I filter all of the products by number of orders, and I check out the store that the parts come from. In the case with a frame, the brand was Bicycle. And the reason I went with that one was, first of all, the frame was quite cheap. And second of all, the AliExpress store, Bicycle, been running for over 12 years. So they have been able to keep their business up and running for 12 years, which yeah, is quite a long time. That gave me the confidence to be relatively sure that this is not a junk brand. And up until this point, I've also not had any problems. The frame came with all of the necessary parts. So we had the headset, we had the seat post clamp and the seat post clamp bolt. We had the derailleur hanger, didn't come with a spare unfortunately. And we also had all of the necessary bolts for, the bottle cages. We have here 3 on the C-tube. There's another 2. There's unfortunately not the possibility to have a third bottle cage on the lower down tube. Not a big deal. The same due diligence I have done on pretty much all of the other parts as well. So the crankset was the most sold crankset below, I think, below 50 bucks or so. It was quite a bit cheaper than that. It was 25 euros and it's BSA compatible. So with that boring stuff out of the way, let me talk to you about the performance of this bike and what is really important. I've had this bike for 2,000 kilometers, and during that distance I have taken it commuting, even though it wasn't really supposed to be a commuter bike, but still did it with that. I went on single track trails, I went on fire roads like this one. I did longer rides, about 100 kilometers, 120 kilometers, which is with a mountain bike a bit more extensive than with a road bike, let's say. Yeah, I've pretty much done it all. Also hit small jumps with that, and I have to say, yeah, it's performed flawlessly. The shifting was great. I have never had to really adjust the shifting in the back. As you can see, I'm running a 1x drivetrain here with a 32 in the front and an 1152 in the back. The ratio has been great. I think also for steeper climbs like 12 to 16%, this is still a very adequate ratio to get up, even if it's a bit gravelly, like here, you have some chunk. The braking performance has been great as well. I think Shimano XT brakes, which have really come down in price. I think I got these for like the whole set for about 115 euros. For hydraulic brakes, you can really not argue with that price. They have been flawless as well. I've never had to bleed the brakes at all. Still running as crispy as day one. When it comes to the frame, I also don't have anything bad to say. As I said, it's about 1 kilo, so it's quite light. I've installed some butyl tubing on the lower seat stays here in order to keep the rattling down, because this derailleur is not one with a clutch, so the chain can wobble around a bit. I also have to say, if I would change anything, I probably would do that first to install a derailleur with a proper clutch. I've not had the chain come off. The cassette has a super nice ratio. 1152 is, I think, perfect for a 1x drivetrain for the mountains. I do not have problems at all going up very steep climbs, even up till, let's say, 18 to 20% sometimes, like very gravelly, like this one here. I think going with 100 millimeters of travel in the front is also pretty sufficient. I'm not hitting the biggest jumps or anything, so this is mostly for XC. I have to say, most of the time I'm riding around, I probably have it locked anyway. So yeah, could also go with a rigid fork at some point in the future. Would maybe not be a nice video comparing those two. The bottle cage is also been running flawlessly. I've not had any bottles fall out ever. The bottles are pretty tightly gripped in there. The pedals are the old trusty Shimano 520, so the super cheap, very basic mountain bike pedals, SPD pedals. Also no problem with that. If there's anything else I would change on the bike, it would probably be the tires. So the tires are at the moment 2.1 inch tires, which is a bit narrow for some of the rougher gravel. It's also the Pace Edition is quite shallow when it comes to the profile. I think I would like some, maybe not quite enduro type tires, but something with a bit more grip would be quite nice. And also maybe going with 2.2 or 2.3 inch tires, especially because these are not officially tubeless compatible, and I would like to have the reassurance that the tubeless tire will not explode in the future. If I were to go with AliExpress parts again, I'm not super sure if I would go with carbon parts again. So what happens to me if I, let's say, ride a bit of a rougher trail is that I always get a bit of an eerie feeling. What would happen if the handlebars snap, for example? What would happen if the bottom bracket snaps? What would happen if, the rear stays snap? We have all seen horror videos of carbon frames snap and then the rider going down hard, to say the least. And I have to say, this feeling is sometimes, it's not perfect, let's say. I think if I were to do it again, I would either go with a more respectable Western brand, or I would just go with a different type of material. So I think going with aluminum, going with a steel frame, although it's a bit of a different ride feel, I think is still a very respectable material, especially when you want to go on rougher trails, ride single track, have a bit of fun, hit a couple of jumps. Especially jumps are something I'm a bit afraid of, I have to say, when taking this bike. Another part I would change if I were to do the bike build over again would probably be the handlebars. So the handlebars are a bit eerie to me as well. First of all, I cannot find the offering at all anymore on AliExpress. So it seems like the shop has closed down, which is not a great feeling, to say the least. I also have to say that the carbon layup looks, yeah, let's say irregular. At the top there has been used a lot more bonding material, as you can see on these B-roll shots. On the sides it looks much cleaner and crispier. Also visually I think the sides look pretty nice. I have to say though that the combination of this weird layup in the middle as well as the shop not being available on AliExpress anymore, yeah, not great. In addition to that, which is not really a big deal, but also something to be mentioned, as you can see here, a couple of the bolts have already rusted quite a bit. I mean, that can happen with any metal part at some point, but these are the only bolts that have been rusting, so probably not the best bolts that the handlebar supplier has used here, but all in all, not a great issue. But whether that eerie feeling is justified is, yeah, I guess in the eye of the beholder. It's just something that I wanted to tell you about, but factually the bike has been performing flawlessly, so I can really not say a bad word about it. I also have to say that the process of ordering all of the parts on AliExpress was quite a breeze. Everything came within 5 weeks. Most of the parts came after like 2.5 weeks. The frame took a bit longer. I think the frame was at the higher end of that spectrum, so let's say 5 weeks and a bit. But all in all, I never had to wait too long for any of the parts, which is great. So should you consider building an AliExpress mountain bike as well? Well, I definitely think if you're an experienced tinkerer, you should try. It's a fun experience. Building your bike is a very rewarding experience in itself. Make sure to do your due diligence on the parts that you're using. As I told you with the handlebars and the frame, there's always things to consider of, but I think, yeah, it's a nice process. Try. If you have gotten anything out of the video, please consider liking or subscribing, and in any case, have a great week. Bye bye.